My beloved child, your soulmate saying, I want to talk to you right now. It's very urgent, open this now. Message like this is designed to feel extremely personal and urgent at the same time, especially when it says, your soulmate is saying I want to talk to you right now, because that line directly connects with one of the deepest emotional desires a person can have. The idea that someone special, someone meant for you, is trying to reach out, and the moment you read it, your mind doesn't treat it like a normal message, it starts reacting instantly, it starts imagining, questioning, and connecting it to your own life, and that is exactly why it feels powerful, because it is not just words, it is a trigger for your emotions and your curiosity. Now think about your first reaction, because that moment is very important. You may have paused, you may have felt a slight pull, maybe even a sense of excitement or curiosity, because the idea of a soulmate is something meaningful, something personal, something that feels like it belongs to you, and when the message says, it's very urgent, it adds pressure on top of that emotion, making it feel like this is not something you should ignore. Like this is a moment that might disappear if you don't act immediately, and that combination, emotion plus urgency, is what makes your mind react so quickly. Your thoughts might start moving fast, asking questions like, who could this be? Is someone trying to reach me? Or even, what if this is real? And these questions create a loop in your mind, because they don't come with clear answers, and when your brain doesn't have answers, it tries to create them, it starts imagining possibilities, connecting random thoughts, and filling in gaps, and this is where the message starts to feel even more real. Not because it has given you proof, but because your own mind is building the story around it. But now, slow down and think clearly, because this is where awareness begins. Ask yourself something simple. What has actually changed in your real life right now? Not what the message is suggesting, but what you can actually see, hear, or verify, and if you look honestly, you will realize that nothing has changed. There is no real indication that someone is urgently trying to contact you in this way. There is no real event happening around you, everything is exactly as it was before you read those words, and this is the most important realization, because it shows you that the feeling you experienced came from the message, not from reality. The idea of a soulmate is powerful because it is connected to your emotions, your hopes, and your imagination. But it is also very broad, it can apply to anyone, and that is why your mind can easily attach it to someone in your life, or even create an image of someone, and once that connection is made, the message starts to feel personal, even though it was not specific, and this is how suggestion works. It gives you just enough to make your mind complete the rest. Now notice how urgency plays a role here, because when something is labeled as very urgent, it creates pressure, it makes you feel like you don't have time to think, like you must act immediately, but real communication in life does not work like this, especially something as meaningful as a real connection. It does not come with vague instructions and time pressure, it comes with clarity, with direct interaction, with something you can actually confirm, and once you understand this, the urgency starts to lose its effect. God says it's very urgent message. Your mind may still hold on to a small curiosity, a small, what if, because curiosity is natural, especially when something feels personal, but not every curiosity needs to be followed, and this is where your control comes in, because instead of reacting to that curiosity, you can observe it, you can question it, and you can let it pass, and when you do that, it loses its intensity, because you are no longer feeding it with attention. Now bring your focus back to your surroundings again. Notice that everything is normal, stable, and unchanged, and this is your reality, and reality is always your strongest reference point, because no matter what you read or feel, your environment shows you what is actually happening, and when you stay connected to that, your thoughts become calm again, because you are no longer chasing something uncertain. At this stage, your thinking becomes clearer, because you are no longer reacting emotionally, you are observing logically, and this allows you to see the message for what it is, a combination of emotional trigger and urgency designed to capture your attention, not something based on real evidence, and once you recognize that, the entire effect disappears. You also begin to understand something deeper about your own mind, that it reacts quickly to things that feel meaningful or important, especially when they are connected to relationships or emotions, but not every reaction is based on reality, sometimes it is based on suggestion, and learning to recognize this difference is what makes your thinking stronger, because you are no longer controlled by every thought or feeling, you are choosing how to respond. At this point, you are no longer influenced by the message, because you have understood it, and understanding removes its power, because once you see how something works, it cannot affect you in the same way again, and this is what you carry forward from this moment. Not just clarity about this message, but awareness about how similar situations work. Now your mind is calm, because it is no longer trying to solve something that was never real, and this calmness allows you to focus on what actually matters, your real life, your real connections, and your real experiences, because those are the things that are meaningful, not something that appears suddenly without context or proof. In the end, this leads you to a simple but powerful truth, that not everything that feels personal is real, not everything that sounds urgent is true, and your response is what decides your experience, not the message itself, and once you understand this fully, you naturally remain calm, aware, and in control, no matter what kind of message appears in front of you, because you know how to separate what is real from what is suggested, and that ability is your real strength, something that protects your peace and keeps your thinking clear in any situation. Comment, Amin. This is not joke message own reaction to it, and that is where real control comes from, because at the beginning, the feeling was quick and automatic, your mind immediately tried to connect the word soulmate to someone, maybe someone from your past, someone you think about, or even someone you wish would reach out, and that connection made the message feel real, even though nothing in your actual life had changed, and this is how your mind works. It fills in gaps when something is unclear, and once it fills those gaps, the situation starts to feel personal. Now notice how that feeling has changed, because earlier there was curiosity, maybe even a slight urgency, but now, as you continue reading and thinking, that intensity is not the same, it has reduced, it has become calmer, and this change itself shows you something very important, that your thoughts are not fixed, they can settle, they can return to clarity when you stop reacting instantly and start observing, and that is exactly what you are doing right now. Your mind may still try to bring back the idea, especially because it involved something emotional, but now you have awareness, and awareness allows you to question instead of believe, to observe instead of react, and when you ask yourself if there is any real proof, any real sign that someone is urgently trying to contact you in this way, the answer becomes clear: there is none, and once you accept that, the thought loses its power, because it is no longer supported by reality. At this stage, you also understand something deeper about urgency, that when something tries to rush you, it often removes your ability to think clearly, because it creates pressure, and pressure leads to quick reactions, not logical decisions, but real situations in life, especially something as meaningful as a connection with another person, do not come with vague urgency, they come with clarity, with direct communication, and with something you can actually confirm. Please watch this. I begging you now, bring your focus back to your present moment again. Everything around you is still the same, nothing has changed, there is no real event happening, and this simple observation grounds you, because reality is always stable and consistent, it does not depend on sudden emotional triggers, and when you stay connected to that reality, your mind becomes calm again. Because you are no longer chasing something uncertain. At this point, you are no longer reacting to the message, you are understanding it, and that understanding is what protects you, because once you recognize how these patterns work, emotion, curiosity, and urgency, you can identify them instantly in the future, and instead of reacting, you will pause automatically. And that pause is what keeps you in control. In the end, what you gain from this is not confusion, but clarity, because you now understand that not everything that feels personal is real, not everything that sounds urgent is true, and your peace depends on how you process what you feel, not on what tries to influence you. And once this understanding becomes part of your thinking, you naturally remain calm, aware, and in control in any similar situation, because you know how to stay grounded in reality. Archangel Michael says thoughts, you are fully seeing how they were influenced in the first place, and that awareness changes everything, because earlier the message felt personal, almost like it was connected to your life. But now you can clearly see that it only felt that way because your mind created that connection on its own, not because there was any real situation behind it, and once you realize this, the entire illusion breaks, because you understand that the message did not know anything about you, it only gave you a word, soulmate, and your mind did the rest. Think about that for a moment, because it is very important. The message never mentioned a name, never gave any real detail, never provided any proof, and yet it felt personal, and that is because your mind automatically tried to match it with someone from your memories, your thoughts, or your imagination, and once that connection was made, it started to feel real. But now that you are observing instead of reacting, you can clearly see that the connection came from you, not from the message, and that realization removes its power completely. At this stage, your thoughts are no longer running in different directions, they are stable, because you have already understood that there is nothing real behind the message. And when your mind understands that clearly, it stops creating unnecessary curiosity or urgency, because there is nothing left to chase, and this is where calmness comes from, not from forcing yourself to feel calm, but from understanding the situation so clearly that there is nothing left to react to. You also begin to understand something deeper about emotions, that they can feel very real and very strong, especially when they are connected to relationships or meaningful ideas, but they are not always based on something happening in the present. Sometimes they are triggered by words, by memories, or by suggestion, and once you recognize this, you stop treating every emotion as something that requires action, and instead you observe it, understand it, and let it pass, and that is what keeps your mind balanced. Now bring your focus back to your surroundings once again. Everything is still normal, nothing has changed, there is no real sign of anything urgent happening, and this simple observation is what grounds you, because reality is always visible and consistent. It does not depend on unclear messages or emotional pressure, and when you stay connected to that reality, your thoughts remain clear and stable. At this point, you are not reacting anymore, you are aware, and awareness is what protects you, because once you understand how these messages work, they cannot easily influence you again, and this is what you carry forward, not just from this moment, but into every similar situation, the ability to pause, to observe, and to think clearly before reacting. In the end, this leads you to a simple truth, that not everything that feels personal is real, not everything that creates urgency is true, and your strength lies in your ability to stay calm and think logically, no matter what appears in front of you, and once you understand this deeply, you naturally remain in control, because you are no longer reacting blindly, you are responding with awareness. God is weeping because you are not listening me. Everything becomes completely clear and settled in your mind, because now there is no confusion, no urgency, and no emotional pull left from that message, only understanding, and that understanding shows you something very important, that nothing in your real life was ever connected to it, nothing changed, nothing was actually happening. And the entire effect existed only for a moment inside your thoughts, created by the way the message was written. And once you slowed down and observed it calmly, that effect disappeared completely. Now you can also see how your mind handled the situation. At first it reacted quickly, trying to connect the message with someone, trying to make sense of it. But as you continued to think logically, those thoughts started to settle, because they were not supported by anything real, and this is a very important realization, because it shows you that not every thought needs your attention, especially when it is triggered by something unclear or urgent, and once you understand this, you naturally stop reacting instantly and start observing your thoughts instead, which keeps your mind stable and in control. Bring your focus back again to your present moment. Everything around you is still normal, nothing has changed, there is no real situation that requires urgency or action, and this simple truth is what grounds you, because reality is always consistent. It does not depend on sudden emotional triggers, and when you stay connected to that reality, your mind becomes calm and clear again. Archangel Michael says, open this immediately before it's too late. At this stage, you are fully in control of your response, because you are no longer reacting to what you read, you are deciding how to think and how to respond. And that control is what protects your peace, because once you have it, no message can easily disturb your mind, no matter how emotional or urgent it may seem. In the end, this becomes a simple and powerful understanding, that not everything urgent is real, not everything emotional is true, and not everything that tries to rush you deserves your reaction, and once you carry this understanding forward, you naturally remain calm, aware, and in control in every similar situation, because you know how to pause, observe, and think clearly before reacting. And that ability is your real strength. God says, listen, nothing in your real life was ever connected to it, nothing changed, no one suddenly tried to contact you, and the entire feeling you experienced existed only for a moment inside your mind, created by the way the message was written, and once you slowed down and looked at it calmly, that feeling naturally faded away. Now you can clearly see the full journey of your thoughts, how it started with a quick emotional reaction, then moved into curiosity and imagination, and finally settled into clarity, and this process itself is your strength, because it proves that you are not controlled by every thought or feeling that appears. You have the ability to step back, observe, and guide your thinking toward what is real. And that ability is what keeps you stable in situations like this, because instead of reacting instantly, you take a moment to understand. At this point, your mind is no longer trying to create what-if scenarios or connect the message to someone in your life, because you have already seen that there is no real situation behind it. And when your mind understands that clearly, it stops producing unnecessary thoughts, and this is where calmness comes from, a state where your thinking is no longer being pulled in different directions, but remains steady and under your control. You also begin to understand something deeper about attention, that whatever you focus on starts to feel important, and at the beginning, your attention was fully on the message, which is why it felt powerful, but now you have taken that attention back, and once you do that, the message loses all its influence, and this is a very important lesson, because it shows you that your attention is something valuable, and not everything deserves it. Now bring your focus fully back to your present moment. Everything around you is normal, unchanged, and stable, and this is your reality, and reality is always your strongest reference point, because it does not depend on vague words or emotional pressure. It is something you can actually see and experience, and when you stay connected to that, your mind naturally becomes calm again. At this stage, you are not just calm, you are aware. And that awareness is what protects you, because once you recognize how these messages work, using emotion, curiosity, and urgency, you can identify them instantly in the future, and instead of reacting, you will pause automatically, and that pause is what keeps you in control of your thoughts and your response. In the end, this leads you to a simple truth, that not everything that feels personal is real, not everything that sounds urgent is true, and your strength lies in your ability to stay calm and think clearly, no matter what appears in front of you, and once you understand this deeply, you naturally remain in control, because you are no longer reacting blindly, you are responding with awareness. If you believe in God, then type Amen.